So this is part 3 of this series of navigating Windows, and I'm assuming that you already went through the exercises in the first 2 videos, and so therefore you have this whole file structure created beforehand. That we have the C drive. Within the C drive we have CS12. Within CS12 we made 3 folders: exams, homeworks, and papers, and within exams we have Access, Excel, and Word. So let's go over here to the CS12 folder. And so and the plan for this video is we're going to create a new file. It's going to be a notepad file. It's going to be a text file, just because it's a very easy type of file to create, and because we're going to need a file in order to demonstrate how you copy a file from one folder to another. So we'll create our own file, and then we'll copy it, or we'll delete it, we'll move it, we'll create shortcuts to it, and so on and so forth. So let's start with this. So step 1, create a notepad file. So we'll create it, let's say, within the CS12 folder. How do I create it? I'll right click over here again, and I'll choose new, and there's different types of files we could create, and one of them is text document. So I'll choose text document, and new text document .txt. Let's call this my first. We'll name it with camel case, lowercase my, capital F, my first file. You see how it goes up and down, sort of like the humps of a camel. After the first word is in lowercase, every word afterwards, the first letter is in capital. My first file .text, and here is my file. Due to something called file associations, which we'll talk about in another video, if I double click on my first file, it'll open up for me Notepad. You see, here's Notepad with my first file, and I can type whatever text I want. So what text am I going to type? This is my first file. It has information in it. I don't really care what's in the file. The point is, it's a file that exists and has stuff in it. So then we'll save it. File, save. And then we can close it. I'll just click at this little X, and I'll close it. And now I have my first file .text. Takes up 1 kilobyte over here. The type of the text document, and so on and so forth. By the way, the reason I could see all of this information over here is that there's different views, and the view that I'm in is details view, which tells me all of these details. So my first file .text. If I double click on it, it'll open up Notepad again. You see over here, this is the text that I had typed earlier. So this is a file. So that's the first step. We've created a Notepad file. Now, something that's quite likely different on my computer than your computer is that I can see the file extensions. These are 3 letters, sometimes 4 letters, but usually 3 letters that appear at the end of the file. So once again, over here, my first file is the name of the file, and it has this 3-letter extension. So it's .txt, and the txt means that it's a text document. This is this extension distinguishes it from other types of files. So, for example, a Microsoft Word document might end .doc, doc, or .docx, or .docm. So there's different types of file extensions, and it's useful to have this information, and so you should really also change your computer's settings to see these file extensions. Let me show you how you do this. I'm going to show you the thing that's consistent, the way of doing this that's consistent across older versions of Windows and the newer versions of Windows. We're going to press Alt to bring up the menus, and under Tools, we'll choose Folder Options ... When you see a ... in a menu, it means it's going to open up a dialog box. So Folder Options, and we'll go under View, and if you scroll down, eventually one of the options is hide extensions for known file types. That means that if Windows knows the type, knows what that extension means, like txt means a notepad file, a text file, and so it knows to open up Notepad for it. So it knows that extension. It knows that .doc is a Word document, a Microsoft Word document. So if it knows that file type, it's going to not tell you. Because why do you need to know that information? And they're afraid that it'll confuse you. By default, in most copies of Windows, by the default is going to have this checked off, that extensions for known file types are going to be it's going to be checked off. So you want to go in here and you want to clear the checkbox. It no longer says hide extensions for known file types, and then we'll say apply, and now this particular folder will have that. Let me just show you. Here it says my first file.txt. Let's not hide extensions for known file types. Oops. Let's not let us hide these extensions, and I say apply, and now you see it just says my first file, and it doesn't have .txt afterwards. So we're going to take off this hiding this extensions. We'll apply it to this folder, and in fact you should apply it to all folders. So we'll click here to apply to all folders and say yes, and now this is a system-wide setting. You'll now see the file extensions, which is a good thing. So now we can say OK, and we're done with this step, that we could see these file extensions. Okay, the next step is to copy a file from one folder to another. So we're going to copy a file from one folder to another. From which folder to which other folder? It's a good question, but we'll figure this out. Let's start. We want to copy my first file.txt into the homeworks folder. It shouldn't necessarily be in C:/CS12. We would want to have it in C:/CS12/homeworks. So how do we copy it? Well, there's many different ways of copying. You could just use the mouse, you could use menus, you could use keyboard shortcuts. So let's choose one way of doing it. I'm going to right click on my first file, and over here we say copy. Now it didn't copy it. What's going on? It turns out that there's something called the Windows clipboard, which when you copy something, it sends it to this Windows clipboard, and it holds it there for you until you do a paste. You can't see the Windows clipboard, but it just exists until you do a paste. So we did the copy. See over here, so it says my first file, but it also has been copied. And now we'll go into, let's say, the homeworks folder, and we'll right click, and we'll choose paste. And here we have my first file.txt. It pasted it from the Windows clipboard. If we go back up to CS12, we have my first file. If we go into homeworks, we have my first file. This is a copy. It means it's a duplicate. There's two versions of the file sitting on your computer. If you edit one, it's not the same as the other. So here we go. Let's say my first file. I could say, put the word hello in here and save it. File saved. And then if I open this up again, it has that word hello. But if I look in the copy is a separate file, so it doesn't have the word hello in it. It's two separate files. So that's creating a copy. Why would you want to create a copy? One common reason would be as a sort of a backup. You want to go back to the older version at some later point, possibly, so you make a copy and then you might only edit the new file. This is in fact within many of your lab exercises. The first step is to take whatever file you have and save it with the same file name but with an underscore solution afterwards, and that way you'll be editing that solution file, but you can always revert back to the original by just taking that original file that you had made the copy of. Okay, so that's one thing that we did. We copied. Now we could also delete a file. How do we delete a file? Let's go to my first file over here and then look at the delete key on the keyboard and you could press delete. That would send it to the recycle bin. Or alternatively, you could right click on it and you could choose delete. That would delete it, send it to the recycle bin. Or you could do perhaps somewhere here under file. See, under file, one of the options here is delete. So and that would send it to the recycle bin. And then we once again only have one copy of the file, one version of the file. That's this one over here, my first file.txt. Okay, so that was one way of copying and one way of deleting. Let me show you another way of copying. Another way is you can click on the file, and then you can, so we saw beforehand you right click and you say copy. There's actually two other ways. You could hold down on the control key. Look in the left bottom corner of your keyboard, there's a control key. You press control, and while holding down on the control key, you press the letter C. That's copy. So that'll send to the Windows clipboard. And then right next to the letter C is a V. So you could go to another folder, let's say the CS12 folder, press control V, and control V, here, control C, and then control V, and control V pastes. So that's another way of copying and pasting. A third way of copying and pasting, here we'll just get rid of this, is instead of pressing control C to copy, you can Alt E. Alt brings up the menus, and E under edit, and you can press copy. You see over here there's an option, control C copies, and then control V paste. So we could copy over here, that puts it to the clipboard, and go to whatever other folder we want. Let's say this main folder over here, and Alt E and paste, and that will paste it for me. So that's another way of copying and pasting. And let me show you one further way of doing it, and that would be, we'll open up another copy of Windows Explorer, and these two folders could sit side by side. So here's the first one, right over here, and here's the second one, and like this, you'll be able to have two Windows Explorers or two folders open at the same time. So let's say in this one we'll navigate to the Homeworks folder where we have my first file, and here we'll navigate just to the CS12 folder but not the Homeworks folder. So then you can go here and copy, control C, or edit copy. Then you click in here so that this is now the present working directory, and control V will paste it. Another thing that you can do is again, edit, copy, edit, paste. Here's one more interesting thing that you can do. You can click on the file and drag it over, and you drop it. But look what it says. This says move to CS12. What is move? We'll see more about moving in a second. But moving, that means that it's going to remove it from the first location, from the origin, and it's going to place it in the destination, and it's only going to exist in the destination. It's no longer going to be a copy, it's going to be a move. So we don't want to do that, really. We don't really want to move it. We want it to make a copy. So how are we going to make the copy? Instead of clicking and dragging like we did over here, what does it mean to click and drag? You hold down on the mouse button, and then you don't let go, and you move the mouse, and you only let go after you're finished dragging it to the other place. So instead of that, we're going to click and drag with the right mouse button. And then when you let go, you'll get a little pop-up menu, which it says copy here, move here, create shortcut here. So we're going to say copy here, and that's going to make a copy. So we saw how to copy a file, how to delete a file. Let's see we saw already one way of moving a file from one folder to another. Let me show you another way or two of doing that. So we have over here our two files, two folders that are open, and so this is an easier way of doing it when you have both of them open side by side. So if we wanted to move from one folder to the other, we can just click on the first file. Just remember we had Control C and Control V, so this is Control X. You can press Control X on the file, and it changes what the icon looks like a little bit also. Or Alt E and cut. Control X is to cut. So cutting makes a reference to it on the Windows clipboard, but besides that, it means that when we paste it, it will no longer be in its original place. So we've cut it. And now we go to our destination folder and edit paste, or Control V, and then we move it from its origin and we put it in its destination. Okay, let's move this back. So that was another way of copying. And now let's see, one more thing is creating a shortcut to a file or a folder. A shortcut, it's a way of referring to the same file from multiple locations. So I don't really want to have two separate files that are called my first file. But still, I'd like to be able to see it within CS12 Homeworks, and I'd like to also see it just within CS12. So let's make a shortcut. Again, how do you do this? You right-click and you drag, and instead of saying copy here or move here, you say create shortcuts here. And then they call it my first file shortcut. And the type of file that it is, you see over here where it says type, it says shortcut. It's not actually the whole file. If you had a gigantic file of many, many megabytes, so the shortcut is actually extremely small. It looks like it takes 2 kilobytes here. But it's a shortcut to the other file. And you can tell also by looking at the icon. If you look at the icon here, in the bottom right corner, there's a little arrow. And that means that it's an arrow pointing to this other folder, to this CS12 Homeworks, my first file. Okay, so you could look at the properties of this, by the way. It'll tell you exactly where the target is, and it's going to see c://cs12/homework/myfirstfile, so it tells you where to find it, and so on and so forth. Let me show you now, let me prove to you that this is actually a shortcut. You could rename this, by the way. It doesn't have to have the word shortcut over here. You could even make it look like it ends .txt, but it's a shortcut file. So we'll go in here. Remember beforehand we made the copy, and so you modified one, you didn't modify the other. So let's do that again. We'll put the word hello in here, and we'll save it. File save. And so now every time I open the file, it has the word hello. If I open up the shortcut, it also has the word hello. If I change this to the word goodbye, and I save this, so then if I go to the original, the file that's being pointed to, and I open it, it now says goodbye. So it's the same file. It's a reference. It's a shortcut to some other file. And you can make shortcuts to files, to folders. And the purpose of shortcuts is just to make it easier to navigate, so that you can see certain files or folders from various places on your computer without having to take up the space to make copies. Okay, so that's really the end of the topic of this video. We did all of this. Very good. And so perhaps the next video will be discussing the difference between Notepad, WordPad, and Word.